everyone, it's Kelly. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my May reading wrap-up. I read 13 books in the month of May, so I'm still in the double digits, and I'm expecting my reading to slow down in June and July, and definitely August. But I've already talked about that in multiple videos about why. So let's just get into this stack. I read a bunch of middle grade this month, and I read some ebooks, and I still need to talk about 2 ebooks that I read in April that is going to be its own separate video because I forgot. And so, yeah. The first book I finished in the month of May was Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. This was the first Mary H.K. Choi book that I've ever read, and I enjoyed it. It was a very quick read for me. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. It's about 2 sisters, and they are both Korean American. They're from Texas, and they moved to New York to... The older sister is like a businesswoman. She has a very kind of like a 6-figure job, and her little sister Jane, who we follow, I think we follow Jane and June, I forget who's who, and that was a very big problem for me while reading this, because I couldn't keep the sisters separate. But the younger sister, she's in school, so she finds out that her older sister has uterine cancer, and she is trying to figure out how she's going to cope with having her sister not in the world anymore if she dies. And it's got insurance fraud and stuff like that. And there's also the younger sister battles an eating disorder, so, and that gets brought up. It's mostly, this book was marketed as a sister with cancer, but the cancer aspect is mentioned whenever the 2 sisters are together. It's mostly focuses on the younger sister's eating disorder and how she thinks that nobody sees her. She's caring about if she's seen or not, and she wants to be noticed, but she feels that nobody pays attention to her. And so, yeah, it's mostly about the younger sister. And the ending I was not happy with. If you have not read this, then I suggest muting me until I put this book down. But the ending, it goes into the older sister's surgery to remove her uterus or something, or I think it's to remove her uterus, to have a hysterectomy, and then the book stopped. I mean, it took all this time. It was marketed as a sister with cancer, and so at the very end, she goes into her surgery, and the book ends. It's mostly about the younger sister and her eating disorder. So I feel that this book was not marketed correctly. It was marketed for the wrong sister, and yeah. So I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5. I really want to pick up Permanent Record and Emergency Contact by this author. I enjoyed it. It was very fast, and yeah, it also found one of my favorite quotes. The mom calls Jane and June her little blood clots, and I read that to my husband, and he was like, ew, that's gross. And I was like, but it's true. And so, hey, I'm going to steal the quote, and my 3 little blood clots in the living room playing their 3DSs. That's sick, I know, but hey, if you're a mom, you know. The next book is my first DNF of the year in a couple of years, actually, and that was a book that I chose for the April buzzword challenge, and it was like space, and so I DNF'd The Daughters of Mars by Thomas Keneally. Thomas Keneally wrote Schindler's List, and I only made it 120 something pages. I still have my bookmark in here. 126 pages. No. This is about two sisters from Australia. They end up becoming nurses during World War One, and it's about their time in the Mediterranean and Alexandria and Egypt. Yeah, I could not get through it because I could not keep the sisters separate. They were flat, and it was so irrelevant, I guess, to their story. They were talking about having, they would go on these dates with some of the sailors and soldiers, and then wounded would come, and they would talk about the blood and the guts and the amputations, and then after they'd clean up, they'd go right back on dates with the soldiers. And it was like, and the grammar, the author puts a note at the beginning saying, oh, there's no commas, there's dashes, because this is taken from letters. Okay, understand that. He did not mention that he emitted quotation marks. So if you were reading a conversation and you did not realize it, and you went back, it would just take you out of the story completely. I reread so many of the same words over and over again because the conversation was just stilted. They were just thrown in there. Didn't make sense. And you had no quotation marks whatsoever. You couldn't tell when a person was talking, and when you did find out it was talking, it was like, oh, well, let me reread that again as a person talking. And it was just bad. So I ended up giving this a 1. Yeah. My first DNF. I wanted to write this. I wanted to read more World War I historical fiction, and this just, no. The next was Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. This is the bind up of all 7 Chronicles of Narnia books, and I'm reading them in publication order. So Voyage of the Dawn Treader was the 3rd book that was published, but it's not the 3rd book in chronological order. But anyways, I'm reading these out loud to my kids, and we have read Chronicles of Narnia, or The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and then Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And we watched the movies. Sadly, there's no more movies being made. And I really wanted to read Voyage of the Dawn Treader because I just wanted to see King Caspian. I wanted to see Ben Barnes. I mean, who doesn't love Ben Barnes? This is the 2nd video I mentioned Ben Barnes back to back. So, yeah. So, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. We follow Eustace and Lucy. They are at their aunt and uncle's for the summer because Peter and Susan, they are with their parents in America. And so, Eustace and Lucy have to spend the summer with their what's the cousin's name? Edmund and Lucy, not Eustace is the cousin. I'm dumb. Okay, so Edmund and Lucy are spending the summer with their aunt and uncle and their cousin Eustace. And Eustace is like, well, they're dumb. They're talking about a magical place and I'm smarter and blah, blah, blah. And so Lucy has this painting in her bedroom that has a ship. And Edmund and Lucy are talking about Narnia. And then eventually the room starts filling with water. And they get sucked in and they're drowning until the sailors jump off the ship and save them. Little bit do they know that it's Caspian's ship, and he's on a mission to find the 7 lords that his uncle banished that were loyal to his father, the King Caspian the Ninth. And so it's their journey, and eventually Edmund and Lucy can't come back to Narnia, and Eustace he changes his ways, and yeah. So this was the last book, I think, with Prince Caspian. I think this 4th book follows his son. I'm not sure. But yeah, I want to be getting into that one very soon. Probably in August when we start back to school. That may be our first reread of the year. Or not reread, but our first read aloud of the year. And I ended up giving Voyage of the Dawn Treader a 3 out of 5. I love the different islands and the meanings, and it was just great. I could not stand Eustace. I liked him more as a dragon. So if that's a spoiler, I apologize. But yes, highly recommend this series if you're looking for a little classic to read aloud to your kids and to watch the movies, because the movies, they're okay. But if you want Ben Barnes eye candy, then watch Prince Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I more recommend Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the movie, very highly, because he's got the facial hair. Okay, I'll stop now. Next one is my favorite read of the month, and that is House of Rijo by Jenny Jekyll. I read this for the Buzzword Readathon in May because the word was house or home, and this is about the Rijo family, and it starts with two kids, a boy and a girl. They are slaves on this island in the Caribbean, Martinique, and they are working this sugar plantation. A Beji and a Dunby. These names are going to be weird. Just keep saying. A Beji is our main narrator. This story is split up into like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts, and each part is her family and her descendants. So it starts off with a Beji in her childhood as a slave, and it talks about her mom being murdered by the overtaker, what's it called, overseer, and or the master, the owner of the plantation, either one of those two. And so the rest of the village comes together to take care and help raise a Beji and a Dunby. So a Beji, she gets called out one day by this traveling medicine woman from another slave plantation, and the woman calls her out and teaches her how to do magic, or the magic that is known, and become one with the spirits and the trees and nature. And so a Beji becomes the new healer, and a Dunby, her brother, he eventually gets married and has a child which kills the mother in childbirth, and a Dunby has to send his daughter off to another plantation where there's a woman that can feed this child. And so the rest of the book follows her as she's growing up and learning how to read and write secretly while she's in Ontario with her masters and her master's daughters, who are her friends and who teach her math and reading and writing. And so she eventually writes back to a Beji secretly through the overseer and his wife. And so it's about her and her family's time living in Ontario and dealing with Jim Crow and race, and it's got LGBT, and so I loved this book. Every part was a different family member, like a Beji in 1785 to 1860, Nellie and Azzy 1949, Rosalie, Martine, Hetty, Guillaume, and Eleanor. It was just so, I loved this family. And then while I was reading it, I realized that there's a sequel coming out. Oh, I cannot wait. It comes out next month, I think. Yes, and this was an arc. I got it, when does the book come out? 2018. I got this book in 2018, and I'm just now reading it, and I'm kicking myself because the cover has always been in the forefront of my mind, and I've never learned how to say this until I did the buzzword, and now I can't stop saying it because Rijo is just so great. Yeah, and I think the sequel is going to be about another part of the family, or another family member who learns how to play the piano, who was in this one. So, oh, yes. Highly recommend. And, yeah, it's historical fiction, Afro-Caribbean, African-American, Afro-Canadian literature. So, yes, pick this up. And, it does have, LGBTQ rep, like I said. The father of one of the son of I think one of the children of the girl who went to Canada. I think one of the characters, one of the children that grew up and had more children that they follow, he loses his wife and he falls in love with a man that he meets while traveling. So it's great. Yes, highly recommend. The next book that I read for the Buzzword Readathon was Never Home by Laird Hunt, and this is set during the Civil War. So I go from loving a book about slavery to hating a book about the Civil War. This is about a woman named, I forget her name, but she changes her name to Ash, and she dresses up and takes her husband's place in the Civil War. And so she had to conceal that she was a woman fighting. And she becomes known as Gallant Ash. She's fighting for the Union side, and she gives herself away multiple times. But she's never found out. Like when she's marching with her unit one day, she sees this woman bare-breasted, naked in a tree, and just calling out to the soldiers. And Gallant Ash climbs up the tree and covers this woman with her coat. And so she becomes known as Gallant Ash because she's respectable to women. And so I had to reread sentences multiple times in this one because of the dialect. It's got that Midwestern twang and like, how y'all doing, and using words where they don't belong, like not proper grammar, but how Midwesterners and some Southerners talk. And so, giving this a 2 out of 5, it did make me want to learn more about women and how they concealed themselves during the Civil War, if they fought, and did some of them really get arrested and thrown into insane asylums? She gets put into a hospital or a mental asylum, and she's being held with other women. There's other men on the other side screaming, getting tortured. It's like a prisoner of war camp, but the women are like losing it, and the men on the other side are from the Confederate side. And so the ending sucked. I hated it. It's just like the author did something, and then I think he forgot that he wrote something, because then he kills off this person. I'm not going to tell who kills off who, but yeah, hated it. Give it a 2 out of 5. I don't know if I'm going to be reading anything else by Laird Hunt. I will have to check. After Never Home, I needed a graphic novel, and so I picked up Amulet, Book 4, The Last Council, and I knew going into this what I figured at the end of Book 3 was going to happen in this, and I was correct. Ended up giving this a 5 out of 5. It was great. I loved it. It's got a little new character, and he's so freaking adorable. He thinks Cogsley is his mom. He holds a stick in his mouth, like, and he's got like teeth that hang over the stick, and it's just so freaking cute. And so, Emily, she is at this place, and this boy tells her that she's a guardian in training now, and the elves get locked up. It's just awesome. It tells more of the story about the old guardians and how I'm covering something of them. So, and it shows true colors and betrayal and deceit, and yeah, so I highly recommend the series by Kazu Kibuishi. I think I'm saying that right. Kibuishi, or Kibushi. I don't know. Yeah, highly recommend. 5 out of 5. The next one is an audiobook, and that is Stuffed by Liz Braswell. I was given the sequel to this, Into Darkness, for a blog tour spot last month in April, and I had to get this. And it's great. It's about this 11-year-old boy named Clark, and his mom thinks he's too old for all his stuffed animals. Clark loves his stuffed animals, and he starts to find out that he can't go to sleep at night until they're a certain way on his bed. And one night he sees one knocked onto the floor, and he wonders, oh, that's sad. And then his mom gets him a play date with a normal boy who she thinks will kick him out of the stuffed animal habit. Little does she know that this boy also loves stuffed animals and teaches Clark all about the stuffed animal army. And the boy starts telling Clark, oh, that stuffed animal is a good one. He's like 5 points on the monsters or the stuffed animal scale. And starts telling them about homemade stuffies that are like the leaders because they have the most love. And if they have horns, they get a +2. And if they're small, then they're like a 1. And so, yeah. So Clark goes to this camp, and he his grandma gives him a stuffed animal to take with him that she made. And it's Foon. So Foon is at this camp, and doesn't really need to be at the camp because he's not allowed. Stuffed animals are not allowed. And this is camp that you can get over this obsession. And so when he comes back, he learns that his dad has gotten sicker, and yeah, the shadows and the monsters that the stuffed army fights are the shadows. And yeah, so they're attacking his dad, they're starting to attack his sister, and the mom puts all of his stuffed animals somewhere where he can't have them, and there goes his army, and Foon is the only person who can fight the evil shadow monster. And it's just great. I loved it. I give it a 4 out of 5. And it's funny because I think Clark's last name is Kent, like Clark Kent Superman. And yeah, so my daughter, she listened to it, absolutely loved it. She did all of her stuffed animals, and it was a fun time. I have a stuffed dog on my desk. I have my bear, my Atlanta Braves bear over there that is absolutely loved. And yeah, so I'm not getting attacked by monsters. We got we got shadows. We got stuffed animals under my daughter's bunk bed, so it's all good. And so yeah, I'm going to be reading the second book in August, I think, or no, September, for the buzzword, which is the word dark. And so yeah, so I highly recommend getting this and reading it with your kids, or letting your kids read it. It's amazing. And if you have a problem with your kids having too many stuffed animals and they're like 13, 14, then I suggest you read this. It's like a handbook. I don't have a problem with my kids having too many stuffed animals. If they ask for a stuffed animal, I want to get them a stuffed animal because they're comfort. So, yes. But anyways, the mom was a total witch. The grandma has major points for creating food, and it's really graphic with the monsters. I can tell you that. If you get scared easily by just hearing things, then I would not recommend listening to the audiobook, but listen to the audiobook. It's great. This book I read was an ebook, and it is Bright Ruined Things by Samantha Cahill. This book comes out in October, so I can't say much, but it's about this girl. She lives on this island with a rich family. She's not part of this family. Her dad used to take care of the grounds. He was a groundskeeper. And so when he died, he asked the patriarch of this rich family to keep his daughter there until she turned of age. And so it's the day of her 18th birthday. She's an adult, and she's scared that the Prosper family is going to kick her off the island. This island is full of magic, and the patriarch of this family, he's the one that founded the magic and harnessed it and controlled it and started like giving it out to other rich families, and enslaved the spirits that had this magic. And so the magic system was great. I absolutely loved it. It's called Aether, and it comes from these wells, and the patriarch, this grandfather, he tells his grandkids that magic, that blood magic, is forbidden. Little do they know that it's the main source of the Aether. The Prosper family made me sick to my stomach. They were just high and mighty and snooty and just, oh, well, I'm so perfect. I got magic and you don't. And you can't learn magic. And it was just gross. The ending, great. It's like open to more books, but I think it's perfect as a standalone. I mean, because you can run with it. You can go with it what you will. I'm not going to say, but it's just perfect. It was another favorite for the month, 5 out of 5. And yeah, the cover, it's like Great Gatsby. And it's historical fiction. It's set in the... it talks about Bessie Coleman, the first African-American female pilot. Yes, and one of the granddaughters, the main character's best friend, she mentions her a time or two about when she's flying. And so that's how the story is dated. So, yeah, really, really loved it. If there was another book set in this world, I would not be mad. Especially from more about the spirits. But if it's a standalone and it's left alone, then it's okay. Yes. Arisha and the City of Gold. I read this out loud to my kids, and this is the 4th in the Pandava Quintet. There's going to be a book 5, and I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5. So we get a new Pandava Sister, and at the very beginning, when Arisha woke up, I knew that it was going to go a certain way. It's just predictable. But if you have not read the series, this is set in Hindu mythology. We follow a girl named Arisha. She lives in Atlanta with her mom, who runs a Indian museum, and then she finds out that she is a reincarnation of a Pandava brother from the Hindu mythology, and she lets out a monster to show her friends that she's cool, and this monster turns out to be known as the Sleeper, who can stop time, who freezes time. So the first book, she has to go on a quest with another Pandava sister, and they find out they're dad gods, or they're god dads. And yeah, so this one, we find out the last Pandava, and yeah, I was waiting for this because one of my favorite characters in this book, Boo, he's a pigeon. He did something really bad in the third book, and it just made me so angry, and I had to know what his motivation was to do this. And something happens in this book. I'm not gonna say because it was a fucking huge spoiler, and but yeah, I love the little cheep 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 cheep. If you read this, then you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and I've seen art on Rick Riordan Presents website, Kubira. Yeah, so I had a little knot in my stomach every time Kara, the Pandava sister, like mentioned something, and it was just, girl, no, you're gonna do something. And yeah, so I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5. I can't wait for the 5th book, the Cup of Immortality. Something with immortality. And I'm ready for the cover, because these covers are just so great. And me and my kids had a little vote on what the color of the words are going to be. And so, yes. I'm hoping that Vajra and Dee Dee come back soon. And yeah, recommend. Another ebook that I read is I Am Margaret Moore by Hannah Capin, and I ended up giving this a 2 out of 5 stars. I wanted to love it. Yeah, this also comes out in October, so I can't say much about it, so I'm just going to read my thoughts and then go off of it. But way too long. I think the last third of the book could have been cut, because it says what is, it gives away, it tells what happened to this girl, and then it just keeps going on and on and on, and I'm like, okay, you could have said that in a sentence and we could have been done with this. But it's about a girl named Margaret Moore. She has these 3 best friends, and they're known as the girls in Deck 5, and they go to the summer military camp from age 11 to 18, 19, and they have, it's like a naval ROTC camp, and they learn all about coding and flags and knots and rowing and survival. So and so it jumps back and forth between the different summers, and it was just very confusing trying to keep everything in order. Like, okay, this happened, and then this happened, and then this part will go right here, but it actually goes like right here, and I was just, no. The characters, I had trouble remembering the 4 girls' names because they were one-dimensional. They were same person, no different personalities whatsoever. You know, one girl was one of the high-class families because of her last name, but she was in love with this girl who could get confused with this girl, and this girl was in that, and it was just so confusing. It was not written well. The first half, it was jumping back and forth. The second half went like an actual story, like this, 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 and this. Here's the reveal, and then more jibber jabber. It was just, I did not know that it was set, it was like a historical fiction, or it was set in the 50s, until it said that she saw 5 decades of summers, and I'm like, okay, so this is a paranormal or a time travel? I'm not going to say because I don't want to spoil it, but it was just, I wanted to love it. She turns into a poltergeist to change the flags, and it's just I wanted to love it. I didn't. So I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But yeah, read it as an ebook, and I'm not going to buy myself a physical copy. Books. The last three I've talked about in a reading vlog that's already up, and I'll link it down below. But if you have not seen those, then go watch that. But the next one I read out loud to my kids, and it is The Library of Ever by Zeno Alexander. This is about a little girl. She has rich parents, and they're off on vacation. They left her with the nanny. The nanny is going to the library because she works for this rich family. So she's like pretending she's above her station, and she wants to read this book so she is knowledgeable on the topic, and so she can join in and tell everybody that she knows more than they do on this subject. So she goes to the library. Lenora runs away and sees this boy getting bullied by a guy in a bowler hat. So technically bowler hats, it lead us to watching Meet the Robinsons because the guy has a bowler hat. Anyways, not important, not relevant, but she finds this humongous library with everything in it. And she sees this 10-foot tall lady like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be up here. And Lenora's trying to help this boy because he wants to read books on astrophysics. Okay. And so Malachi makes her fourth assistant librarian, a fourth assistant apprentice. And Lenora has to do all these quests. And after each completion of the quest, she moves up the ranks. And she becomes well known in the library with the other librarians and the patrons. And then she finds out something evil is afoot. A foot. I can't lift my foot this high, but it's a joke in our house. A foot. And so there's robots, there's time travel, there's hot air balloons, there's talking whales, talking penguins, and it's just great. I loved it. I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5. Loved the ancient Egypt part. It talked about Bubastis, and I got my kids talking about the book that they read at the beginning of the school year when they were learning about ancient Egypt, and I just loved that, how it got them talking, and they retained information that I taught them, so it gave me a good feeling inside that I'm doing something right. But and this also got us to watch the movie Bolt because it talks about styrofoam packing peanuts being a thing, and you know, Bolt, it weakens him. So yes, I really loved this little middle grade. It was cute, it was great. I picked this up because I was given the sequel last year for a blog tour spot. I was sent an e-arc and I didn't get to read it, and I lost it, and yeah, so I decided, hey, to bump up my NetGalley score, I need to read this and review it. So I picked this up, loved it, and yeah, highly recommend if you're into quest and little mid-grade fantasies and stuff. This next book makes me realize that I had a couple of 5-star books this month, and this one is no exception. Has to be a good retelling, and it is Within These Wicked Walls by Lauren Blackwood. This is a Ethiopian Jane Eyre retelling. It follows a girl named Andromeda. Her nickname is Andy, and she is a Diptera, and that is an exorcist. And so she gets called to come to this castle to help rid it of its evilness and the evil eye. And so she is not a licensed Diptera. So she's going for a patron, and she gets to this castle and it finds it really, really cold, and that each room is got something going on in it. And so she starts doing her little amulets and putting them up, and little does she know that she's showing the big baddie that, oh, this is what you can do. Okay, so I'm learning your every move. And then she finds out that it's just like bad, and that her guardian who rescued her from a brothel when she was sold to by her parents, and that was just he survived a manifestation of this, and that he is refusing to teach her how to beat it, and it's just great. It's very creepy. It was so atmospheric. I was reading this at night, and my husband made a sound, and I got so scared. I did not sleep well that night. I'm not usually one afraid of the dark or my cat that walks around in the dark, but that night, no. No. Yeah. I'm 30 years old and I was scared of the dark. The characters were so lifelike with their pain. I felt for Magnus. I hated Peggy. Yeah. It was so lifelike with the pain, the suffering, the happiness, and the sarcasm. There was so much sarcasm, and it was just funny and great, and just I want more from Lauren Blackwood, and it's made me want to read the actual Jane Eyre, because I read My Plain Jane last year, and even though that was spooky and creepy, or not creepy, but spooky and like paranormal, this one was way better than My Plain Jane. And so I'm going to be doing like a book battle between My Plain Jane and Within These Wicked Walls. So I highly recommend Within These Wicked Walls. It doesn't come out until November, which sucks, but I will be buying a copy. And Lauren Blackwood has now become one of my auto-buy authors. Even though this is her debut, she's automatically on this list. And so I highly recommend it. I read it in 5 days because it was an ebook and my ebook copy went, it expired. I was about to say it stinked, but hey, that works too. Last book that I read in the month of May, and that was Spells Trouble by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. This is the first book in the Sisters of Salem series. These are the authors that wrote the House of Night series, and I give this a 3 out of 5. It has such bad reviews on Goodreads that I was a little scared. But, yeah. I was enjoying it. The prologue, I loved. I loved how it was Witches of Salem. And it showed, it's like the backstory of how the good sisters got their start in Illinois. And it's, about Sarah Good. She was the first witch to make a mark, or she followed these ley lines to this town and did a pentagram, and that was the gates. And we followed these two sisters, Hunter and Mercy, and their mom ends up being killed by this beast in one of the trees on the night of their 16th birthday when they are committing to their chosen god or goddess. And so the sisters find out that the trees are dying. And the trees guard these gates to the different underworlds, like Norse, Greek, Egyptian, Japanese, and another one that I'm kind of blanking on. And I loved the magic story. I loved the background. I loved all of the setting. I did not like the sisters because they would be serious one moment, and then the sister with the boyfriend, she'd be all giddy and perky and preppy, and it was just gross. Their cat, Xena, I loved her. Yeah, she reminded me so much of this baby, because this baby loves tuna. And she loves her fresh water, and she is picky about her fresh water and her tuna. Yeah. So Xena liked hot chocolate. She was a cat person, and so she liked hot chocolate. She like licked her paw and brushed her flowing locks. Yeah. The one thing that I cringed at and hated and made me say, what the actual fuck? This is a young adult. It's got a full-blown sex scene in it. It's not intercourse, but oh my god. If you have read erotica, mainly 50 Shades of Grey, and if you have read fan fiction about your favorite series, and it had sex scenes in it, mainly a blowjob, then you've read this part. It's like so generic. I say it was copy and pasted from other fan fictions because it was word for word about the thing. It was just, I'm married. I cringed so hard. Okay? This, I was not expecting it. 16-year-olds doing this. It was just gross. And, Yeah, no. I was going to let my daughter read this book, not with Dad. So, I say that it needs to be changed from young adult to, like, new adult. Because why would you want 14, 13, 15-year-olds reading this to 16-year-olds doing it like she's been doing it all her life? No. I loved the trees and the mythology. Hated the characters. Besides Xena, she was the best. I read this book in 5 days. And I am interested enough to pick up the second book called Bite of Omens. I'm interested in how the story plays out. I'm interested in the stories. I want more of the historical fiction, witchy stories. And I want to know what happens with the trees. The trees made the whole book. So, yeah. 3 out of 5. Do I recommend? After the 13 books I read in the month of May, I got some 5 stars. I got a new favorite. And, yeah. It was a great, solid reading month. How June's going to play out, I have no idea. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, that red button right there. You see that button? Click it. And, yeah, hit the thumbs up button. You see that out there? Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. Leave me a comment down below. Have you read any of these books? Or were you thinking about reading any of these books? I'm done talking. So, yeah. Let me know down in the comments. And I will see you in my next video.